Before we start this video, a monolithic thank you to Weon for the thumbnail of this video. Please give the man some support on Instagram, as there is no one who deserves it as much as he does. Now back onto the video. To us, motorsport is the most exhilarating, heart-pounding, adrenaline-fueled tool in which to celebrate the gift with four wheels burden upon us. Turn 10 Studios, a team grown off of this shared ideology and passion for the art of motorsport, once upon a time proudly wore the same respect and exhilaration for motorsport years ago. Before you had the opportunity to play their virtual caricatures of this passion, they orchestrated beautiful cinematic introductory pieces out of sheer will alone. They knew you were only going to see this once, but they did it anyway. Why? Because they cared. While creating a video game is objectively a project, Forza Motorsport was one derived from love. Forza Motorsport 2023 proves that this love has dissipated itself across the 6 years of development that this game undertook and faded into obscurity. And quite poetically, alongside these heartfelt films made for the opening of this now corporate and soulless project, becoming nothing more than an artificially voiced, flavor text-filled shell of a game, Forza Motorsport was designed to reboot and reinstill the love for motorsport that lives within fans of both new and old. Yet for a game which doesn't even include sanctioned motorsport in its main content, this end product clouds itself in obscurity and stands shaking, held together by broken strands of its golden days legacy. Forza Motorsport is the very embodiment of why Forza's ever vehemently disgruntled fanbase are done with this series. But that is not why we're here today. This critique is one last stand against Turn 10 and the creative directors who run this series that we grew up adoring, who with a heavy heart beg of you to realize everything wrong with modern Forza. As the age-old saying goes, first impressions are everything. When it comes to a genre which on a very meta level has most games following the same concept, how you present and differentiate your game is quite possibly the most important statement piece there is. This is something I feel most racers these days are afraid to really try and push out of a safe and very clinical box, spare for a Need for Speed Unbound. Forza has been, with motorsports since 5, intentionally devoid of any sort of character, prioritizing its content and gameplay over appearance, very much in a substance over style approach. Horizon has presented itself as being the accessible, easy, positive hunky-dory game for everyone to come join and hang out and collect some cars, man. It doesn't take itself very seriously, but at the same time doesn't want to offend or give off any vibes which may seem taboo or offensive. The very concept of competition or rivalry is in any way censored in Ultimania. On the competition side of things, we have Gran Turismo 7. I may have a separate set of straws to pull with the game itself, but presentation-wise, it's entrancing. Historic automotive monuments, pieces of human history and the importance of the automobile drape themselves across this carefully artisan-crafted stage of spectacle, in which the most painstakingly detailed automobiles in this medium gladly take their roles. Accented by orchestral, awe-inspiring compositions which your ears have the grace and due diligence to hear, Gran Turismo 7 is the only game which is allowed to play it safe, thematically, because it tackles this ideology with respect and prestige, unlike competitors which attempt the same mindset but out of fear of offending. Forza Motorsport from the outset has nothing. Throughout the 8th generation, motorsport games had a form of synchronicity in menus, themes, interface, slowly changing bits at a time. With Motorsport 2023, this synchronicity, that identity, is gone. This main menu is one of the most depressing in this niche, no longer having your last used car on display, but stuck on the cover's Cadillac LMP prototype unless you manually set it to be something else. The interface itself feels like an afterthought, looking as if it was ripped straight out of any mobile racer you can download for free. This facetious lack of cohesion rears its ugly head again by committing another cardinal sin, a lack of intuity. Because Forza wants to display its cover cars so proudly at all times, you can't just hop in and quickly upgrade the car you've been currently driving in the championship. For either upgrades or paint, you must select that option, then the car you would like to use, each and every time. There is an entire tab dedicated to what suit your driver wears. but not one for multiplayer. That's a submenu, because priorities lie in having different colored suits, I assume. The loading screens are either an altered screenshot of the cover art, or whatever this is. I mean, come on, these are blatant screenshots with no editing whatsoever. This is in comparison to Gran Turismo 7, which doesn't need loading screens. It's optimized enough that the only loading screen you see is the opening. Transitions to racetrack are smooth as butter and seamless. This all feels very much like a pre-alpha or a test bed, and more proof of this shows when there is an option right on the main menu of the game to report bugs and make suggestions, instilling that Turn 10 seriously has this little confidence in this finished $70 product. Unfinished is the theme that this presentation gives off, accented by a lack of features past. Forza Motorsport 6, 2 games ago, let you choose between multiple backdrops for where your cars could be staged. Same with the beloved Forza Motorsport 4. It's bad enough looking at how its predecessors outshined itself in terms of presentation, but when you look at what's being sold as the competitor to Motorsport, the real shame sinks in. Gran Turismo 7 carries on the series' lineage of world-style menu designs. It's creative, unique, and does what it can to not feel like a menu screen, but instead a piece of design, which even has a day and night cycle. You can easily navigate to all of the game's main attributes by going to each hub, which will then branch out into each respective subsections. The cars on display are whatever you've been driving, and Gran Turismo 7 in its full confidence knows that it has the best car models in the industry, so they showcase them like the works of art they are, down to every nook and cranny. And this brings up the next debacle, the whole from the ground up discourse. I will tell you right here and now, this game is not in the slightest bit developed on a new engine, or from the ground up. This is a slightly tweaked Forza Tech engine, which somehow looks worse. Now before the straw man comes in that graphics don't matter, you're right, they don't. But when you market and advertise a game that is entirely from the ground up, and show off a product that looks like this, when in reality it looks like this, it is blatant and undeniable lying and untruthful marketing to your customers. The most prominent example of downgrades, and not just on the visual front, would be the cars, and the question of if Turn 10 still views the automobile as art. What defines a car as art? Is it the car itself? Is it how it's portrayed? A mixture of both, perhaps? I'm a firm believer that cars in their purest form are art, and Turn 10 themselves once shared this mindset. Back in the days of Forza Motorsport 4, each car was painstakingly scanned and oogled over, and a select few had the special privilege of becoming museum pieces that you could admire and endlessly explore through AutoVista. In-depth engine, oil, tire, and mechanical specifications would be beautifully graphed for nerds like me. Jeremy Clarkson had some insightful commentary on all of the cars available. Doors and hoods could be opened, and your character model had the ability to recreate walking around, hopping in and starting up these rolling art forms. The AutoVista formula has evolved slowly since its inception in Forza Motorsport 4, spreading to every car in the game, but reducing a lot of the geek facts that I found myself missing. Forza Motorsport has turned what was once a way to celebrate automotive icons into the most watered down and disjointed attempt at this concept possible. When using Forza Motorsport's rendition of Forza Vista, you'll notice the shocking amount of features removed. You can no longer chase your wheels or modify your car at all while in this mode. You can no longer start up your engine and rev your car. Hoods and trunks can only be opened on some vehicles, not all. Animations for hopping in and out of cars or to look at the engine bay have been removed for fade to blacks. You cannot move the camera freely in interiors. Must I go on? Hell, they've even renamed Forza Vista to View Car. This incessant and clinical removal of any ounce of soul, resulting in the most creativity devoid and corporate feeling Forza there has ever been. Yet for a game that I would describe as corporate, the cars themselves feel short of even amateur. This from the ground up multi-million-dollar title is still recycling car models from back in 2005, nearly 20 years ago. Cars which looked stunning in Horizon 5 even look like they've been ripped from mobile games. I hate bringing up Gran Turismo 7 so often, but it is the benchmark in which Forza Motorsport has targeted, and this side-by-side demonstration of each game's graphical quality should be proof enough we are heading backwards. Graphical fidelity is not what I look forward to in games. I focus more on art style and presentation more than anything else in that vein. Yet even when it comes to this, Forza Motorsport can't hold a candle to its older siblings. To call this game dead would be an insult to death itself. Devoid of color, benumbing to gaze upon, blurry, uncharismatic foregrounds and backgrounds, Motorsport does its absolute hardest to make sure nothing stands out, as if ashamed of itself. And ashamed it should be. This car list is not only the smallest since Motorsport 5, but by far the most broken. The Alfa Giulietta has permanent Forza arrow from the dealership to the track. Cars are colored incorrectly, such as the 488 Pista only having parts of its iconic stripe. The XJ220S has red wheels. The AMG GT Black has white wheels. The F90 M5 looks like this. The McLaren 720S has a Bentley badge. The 458 Italia's wing is Bluetooth, and the 718 Cayman doesn't have a roof. If this is what from the ground up means, I'd like to see what Turn 10's ground was. The recycling bin? How have they managed to not only recycle this content, yet break it even more than its original state? And speaking of broken, the economy. I'm convinced they chose a randomizer for pricing these cars. Why? Well, no car costs more than $450,000. The Ferrari 250 GTO is cheaper than a Shelby GT500 or a Viper. The Carrera GT is cheaper than a GT3 RS. The Aston DB4 Zagato, an 8-figure car in real life, is cheaper than a BMW Z4. This is just nonsensical, and made far worse with this game's currency situation, which we'll cover when we get to the campaign segment. So this is the from the ground up quality over quantity approach that we're going for. Turn 10. This. Forza Motorsport 7 had nearly double this car list. The cars themselves looked better, the game itself looked better, we did not have this many bugs, and it still launched with more cars than its predecessor. It's common to hate on Motorsport 5, but at least Motorsport 5 was a revamp. Replacing the game engine, car models with new ones, resetting the series to an all-new console generation. Motorsport 4 to 5 was at least visually and conceptually a step forwards. Yet now with the dawn of an even more powerful console generation, we face a game which looks worse than its predecessor running on 10-year-old hardware. Less visuals, less content, less cars, and absolutely zero soul. And we know for a damn fact this game is cutting cars from Forza Motorsport 7 and Forza Horizon 5 to simply extend the game's life further by having you come back to what you should have had since launch. Staples of Forza history here are missing. No Bugatti Veyron, no 2013 GT500, no Lamborghini Murcielago, no Nissan 370Z, no E92 M3, no 991 Turbo S, meaning that the most recent 911 Turbo in this game is from 1993. The only Pagani in this list is the Huayra BC. Hell, these lying snakes even said that they fixed the lighting on the Huracan, which, that car isn't even in the game, you mungs. Forza Horizon 5's good DLC cars, such as the GR86, 2023 BMW M2, Ferrari 296, Huayra R, and plenty of others, have been cancelled to add in post-launch. Turn 10 even decided it was acceptable to make the Roush Racing Mustang from Forza Motorsport 6 a paid DLC car. Yes, they are charging you for content you had in the past. In that same car pack, they are charging you for GT3 cars which are years out of date. Oh, and that's day 1 DLC by the way. Hell, the less than 5 new cars in this game have already been added into Horizon 5, meaning that apart from race cars, you truly do not have anything new to look forwards to. The only. And even this is a stretch. Improvements of these cars from Motorsport 7 is the physics and tire model. Yet even this has caveats. I expected for this ground-up redesign to have driving feel wildly different from Motorsports of old. And even if the rest of the game itself was a disaster, at least the core driving would be something solid to grasp onto. Yet no, this feels like going from Motorsport 6 to 7. All of Motorsport's trademark flaws are still rampant. The approach chosen for fake realism, adding dramatic amounts of understeer and inaccurate amounts of heft and vehicle weightness, remind you that this is still by no means a simulator, but a simcade racer trying its hardest to cosplay as a sim. Forza Motorsport is what happens when a studio realizes its brand has reached a level to sell itself, no matter how poor the product. And on that note, let's move on to the depths of this catastrophe. Now we know that this has been a long video, and we need some time to unwind for a second. And what better way to do so than with the sponsor of today's video, Royal Match. Royal Match is a 100% free-to-play, ad-free, and engaging Match 3 puzzle game. Now the premise may seem simple, it's all about helping King Robert rebuild his castle, but I'm telling you, Royal Match is so much more than the sum of its parts. You can play any of its thousands of levels anywhere, thanks to it not needing an internet connection. Yet if you are connected, you can team up with your friends and compare each other's scores. Royal Match is a fantastic way to just wind down and have some good old-fashioned you time. And if you'd like to get started, use our link down in the description below and come join the millions of players on a Royal Match adventure today. Forza Motorsport is by all definitions a reboot of this series. 6 years is how long it's been since the last entry, and with that long of a wait time and the promises made, this is not a game you can simply mess up on. Rebooting a series means that from this point onwards, a new identity must be set in stone. Ground and framework for an entirely new approach starts here. Yet for a reboot, Forza Motorsport takes an entirely new approach to this gaming phenomenon by relying purely on brand cachet and selling an inferior product to games sold 2 generations ago. Let's talk tracks, the most important part of any track-based racing game. We have 20 tracks in Forza Motorsport, compared to 27 in Forza Motorsport 4 12 years ago. The number alone is disappointing, but it's when you look at what tracks are missing when things get bad. The Alps, Bathurst, Brands Hatch, Circuit of the Americas, Daytona, Dubai, Hockenheim, Long Beach, Monza, the Nordschleife, Prague, Rio, Road Atlanta, Sebring, Sonoma, the Test Track, Top Gear Track, and Yas Marina. Edited in post, Yas Marina has since been added in, but still, why was it not here at launch? These are all cuts from Forza Motorsport 7's 33-strong list, with the excuse of remodeling. Now granted, there are some benefits to this, but I call major bullshit on every one of those fictional tracks, so why aren't they here? Okay, so there's less tracks than before, most of the fan favorites are gone, but surely there's some new tracks to really wow us away, right? Well, we have the additions of Kailami and Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, which on their own are solid choices. The new Hakone track is truly the only thing I found enjoyment out of in this entire game. When the lighting isn't offing itself, this is a really good looking track. But the rest, we have Eagle Rock Speedway. It's an oval. Grand Oak Raceway. This track is the definition of it exists. It's bland as hell to look at and the layout is alright, but it's well and truly devoid of anything. With our cars, we've been over the fact that the list and models haven't changed in part since the original Motorsport. Yet it's also what you can do with them which leaves Motorsport gripping desperately onto its old self. The upgrade menus have been reorganized, yet it's all the same as it's ever been. Cosmetics are recycled from games past, except for critical components such as wheel spacers, leaving your Mark IV with wheel gaps so large you could fit the rest of the cut cars in there. Forza Aero, another debacle raised from the initial trailers. And yes, Forza Aero remains completely unchanged. Hell, even tires don't look any different apart from race. They couldn't even be bothered to recycle old textures. This is the reboot of Motorsport, and we're still using decade-old Forza Aero. We couldn't add something like multiple options, or what Gran Turismo has had since before Motorsport 5 even, with fully customizable and adjustable wings and end plates. Of course not. Motorsport lives off of games past and adds nothing new of its own, stuck in the past when it needs more than anything else to evolve and cut off its history. Oh, but just you wait, cause we still aren't done with what Motorsport's ditched. The auction house, gone. You like drag racing? Gone. Drifting? Gone. Autocross? Gone. That's 3 entire disciplines and communities in which Motorsport has simply abandoned, cast away to the side. Because you don't matter to turn 10. Why would you? This entire game doesn't matter to them, and everything we've brought up is clear evidence that no matter how this dumpster fire was presented pre-launch, no matter how much corporate flavor text they chuck up on the screen to make you justify spending your hard-earned money on a continuously devolving product, they don't care. Year on year, Forza has released inferior products to the last, slowly rebuilding them back to what they should have been at launch, yet at the end of their life cycle, and then resetting all of that progress back to an even lower starting point each and every game. What you just saw was a clip that Serp took on our first few days playing this game, and this is a personal clip of mine, mere minutes into booting up the game for the first time. The modern AAA industry seems to be suffering a case of the buggies from time to time. While decently uncommon, when they happen, shockwaves are sent throughout the community. Waves of clips of weird broken stuff, discussions on how gaming is dying with the releases of games like Anthem, Marvel Avengers, Fallout 76, 9th Gen Pokemon, and most infamously, Cyberpunk. Funnily enough though, the cases of games being exceptionally glitches on launch never really applied to racing games, despite some of which being low quality, never were really particularly programmed. That is until October 10th, 2023. The release of Forza Motorsport wasn't just met with missing content, but thousands upon thousands of clips being uploaded of various jank occurring to the poor souls who thought investing their money into this game would be a good idea. A game which, may I remind you, took 6 years to develop. You know what other game had the exact same development time as Forza Motorsport? Tears of the Kingdom. You know, the game that may as well revolutionize digital physics as we know it, took the exact same amount of time to develop and is extremely polished. Am I saying that Tears of the Kingdom is glitchless? Of course not. With a game this ambitious, there's bound to be hiccups. But then again, this game is the single most in-depth physics engine out of any game, debatably ever, and for a game like that to be extremely polished despite that is an incredible feat of programming. You know what isn't an incredible feat of programming? Taking 6 years to copy and paste the last game in the series with less content. Lying about it being on a new engine and from the ground up, and still being less polished than Julian's toe hairs. The state of this game is undeniably atrocious. Hell, if you don't believe us, just take a gander to the known issues on Forza's official support page, probably longer than the game's code itself. Take for instance the various individual car bugs as stated in the cars section of the video, and the atrocious loss of progress we're going to mention shortly in the career segment. But there's way more than just that. Let's have a little lightning round, shall we? Many people's games just straight up crash at the copy-paste championship intros. At various points in the game, your driver's arms may just disappear while in first person, or maybe, when they go to shift gears, their hand will just reach into the right tire. Some cars are just completely pink in the car bay. The McLaren 765 LT just straight up has the wrong color icons when you go to buy it in the auto show. Reflections only apply to the default FOV settings, so if you increase them, it looks like this. Many wheels are just painted incorrectly, and my personal favorite, if you happen to play your game in Spanish, enjoy the game narrating about the Ford Mustang during the intro when you're on the Subaru. Beyond this is even more actually prevalent glitches, such as the lighting and the frame rate having a panic attack whenever you're having a rolling start, or the infamous bug where you can take hypercars into classes way lower than they ever should be. Ever felt like driving a D-Class Bugatti? Don Juan Song made an entire video about it if you want to learn more. Okay, personal tangent from Serp here, so please read this out for me, Mosey Wozy. So my personal car is this wonderful, beautiful, handsome Indy Miata, which I love so much. So of course, it's the first car I buy in any game ever. Now, key thing I want you to notice is the wind debuffeter right between the headrests here. Now here's how it looks in FH5. Completely normal. Do you want to see what that looks like in Forza Motorsport? I wish I had a joke for this, but I'm just sad. Okay, back to the usual video now. Here's a community notice about entering a championship set to start in 2014. Said championship also has a prize of over $100,000, and they got the year wrong. If we keep dragging this out, we'll be here all day, so I'd better finish up this segment of the video now. They didn't even give the M3 GTR its wing. Okay, one more. The Alpha Giulietta has Forza Aero 1 stock. Now a lot of people will be arguing that, oh well, the game will be patched. But is that really the stance you want to take on a matter such as this? Are you really happy With games launching in a state like this, do you not want a finished game at launch? One that won't be patched and live servicified? Hell, with the state that Yas Marina is in, maybe updates won't even save this game. Just what the hell is this? Like I mentioned earlier in the video, with games like Security Breach and Cyberpunk, a game can be beyond broken, yet still be plenty of fun and entertaining. But that's because both of those games had a soul underneath the bugs and glitches, a vision of a fun game made by passionate people, of which the passion I could feel while playing. Forza, however, has the gall to be completely characterless, uninspired, lacking in content, while still being glitchy just to top it off. Bugs do not single-handedly ruin a game, but they do objectively make the experience worse. So when your game is already so shocking mediocre from the get-go, the bugs on top of it only serve to further accentuate how utterly terrible the final product we got is. Again, just to reiterate, this game took 6 years to come out, and the end product is this. It just speaks for itself, really. Multiplayer is a concept that as of recent, Microsoft has latched itself onto and can't seem to comprehend the idea that any game could ever be played by one's lonesome. This sort of mindset has absolutely infected the Forza franchise if Forza Horizon 5's sorry excuse of a campaign is anything to go by. It's pretty sad to see a lot of people seem to believe that there is no place for things like story, ideals, or themes to be conveyed in a racing game. Games like Driver San Francisco or The Crew 1, while very bare bones, still are enjoyable enough to the point where I can look at their campaigns as an art form. Even something very simplistic like Need for Speed Most Wanted, Test Drive Unlimited 2, or the first Horizon game have campaigns that are at the very least enjoyable. Is it unfair to compare games like Most Wanted to a track-based format like Motorsport? I don't think so, at least. You can make engaging stories out of any concept, much less something as broad as the realm of motorsport. Take the Ford vs Ferrari movie, for instance. It's a story built around the idea of motorsport and is one that is engaging and thought-provoking, all while being entertaining. But let's be honest here. The history of Forza Motorsport campaigns have been just simplistic, to put it nicely. Just about every game being strings of events hardly connected in the slightest with not a single named character in sight. With all this being said, even just the nothing bland series of events we'd have in previous games would have sufficed in Forza Motorsport 2023. No one would have cared, nor batted an eye really. But no. We don't even get that. Instead, we are treated to one of the most dull, bland, repetitive, menial, agonizing, mentally exhausting excuses for content that I have ever seen in a game. This campaign might genuinely be one of the single worst gaming experiences I've had the displeasure of trudging through. Is this hyperbole? No. No, it isn't. I really wish it was, but it isn't. The best place to start when dissecting something like this is, well, the start. We begin the usual Forza intro races of taking the cover cars around one lap, where we get plopped into our starter car selection screen, then to our first championship. This introductory championship basically serving the purpose of getting us accustomed to the formula of Motorsport's campaign, which is practice, race, upgrade, repeat until you finish all races. Starting off with the new, and only new, mode Practice, which, as you might guess, is setting your car on the track you'll race on before the event starts for a few practice laps. This sounds like a pretty good idea in concept, and it is quite fun the first few times, getting a feel for your car and the physics while trying to beat a specific time to really push yourself and the car. There is one slight problem with this, and that's that it gets old and fast. After the first few times, it feels less like a practice session and more so artificially lengthening each event by 1.5 times. And just becomes something to shut your brain off while you watch your car waddle around the track a few times before the actual event starts. For every single event. But hey, it's not all bad, because you don't have to do it if you don't want to. That would be a valid point, if not for two things. One is that the game does not at all make it clear that you even can skip practice at all. It does not tell you in the tutorial, and it's hidden away in the exit tab in the pause menu. You know, the tab in which any other game would mean quitting the race altogether. While we're on that subject real quick, The option to restart your race is here too. This absurdly strange UI decision led to many people just not knowing where you could skip, practice, or restart races until way later than they normally should. And for problem number 2 is that practice will reward you with valuable car XP, which will be necessary to keep up with your opponents in the championship. Car XP, for those of you non-informed innocents, is the new XP system used for car upgrades. Earning car XP will earn you... Okay. No, you guys could have used any other abbreviation, and you guys chose this. I can't say this word out loud. Did not a single person on the dev team realize this? Surely someone in the back knew and just didn't speak up because this is hilariously tragic. Anyway, after you've earned your car points, you can then use it to upgrade your car in small increments depending on your level, with level 50 being the highest. Now, anyone who has played this game already knows that this is infamously the single worst upgrade system in any racing game. Hell, even just video games in general. For one, what do you think the XP you earn in your car applies to? Does it apply globally like just about every other racing upgrade system? Or is it tied to specific manufacturer? Who am I kidding? It's only on the single vehicle you're driving. Not only that, it's not even by make either. It is just by what you're driving then and there in the moment. So let's say I have a Skyline R32 I want built for B class. I then like it so much I want another R32 for A class. Well, I can't just buy another and have the parts I've already unlocked available. Nope, I'd have to grind for them all over again, which correlates to issue number 2. It takes forever. Setting a car around Le Mans for about 1 hour and 30 minutes nets you approximately 25 car levels. In order to reach level 50, you'll have to do this twice, totaling to about 3 hours to max out a single car. Can you see the issue with this? Now let's take this to its extreme. Let's say you're maybe a bit of a completionist and sunk in limitless hours playing the same awfully low payout races to obtain all approximately 500 cars in Motorsport 23. But what if that's not enough for you? What if you want to have level 50 on each one of the cars in the game? Well, to accomplish that would require 1,500 hours of mindless driving around an oval. That is 62.5 days straight of nothing but endless driving. That is a sixth of an entire year you would have to spend just on upgrades. I dare you to look me dead in the eye and tell me this is anything but mindless artificial game length boosting. No wonder this became an absolute laughingstock upon release. It was so bad it had to be patched mere weeks after launch, nerfing some of the parts obtained levels down by about half. For example, at launch, engine swaps were only unlocked at level 50, but they are now unlocked at level 25. That instant of a radical change, only a few weeks within a game's life, proves that this was not play tested in the slightest, not thought about at all, and shipped with the idea that us players would just get used to it. But when the backlash was so atrocious, quickly slapped on a band-aid solution to make things slightly less agonizing. Great, now I only need to waste half my day to build 3 cars. I really wish that this was the worst of Forza Motorsport's campaign, but no, it gets even worse somehow. Trust me, I am just as baffled. After you clear the first few races, the game's entire career structure finally opens up to show you this, the entire campaign. Yes, this is it. Now if you're looking at this just as perplexed as I am, then great, you understand well thought out progression systems in racing games. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same for this game itself. Let's start with the obvious. There's only 20 championships. That's little low for a game that took 6 years to develop, but as long as they're varied, unique, interest, I'm ripping the band off now as they're all the same except for different car classes. Now for the second issue you may have noticed, regarding the car classes themselves, where are any actual race car championships? There just are none. No LMPs, no touring cars, no classic Formula 1, no GT3, much less anything resembling endurance. All championships utilize only road cars. Not only that, but even championships like S-Class Open don't even allow any actual track cars anyways. So much for being open. You know the game's silly little cover car? Yeah, not usable in a single championship. The game's cover car. The car advertised to be front and center and what the game will be most recognized by. Completely useless. So great. Hardly any championships, no actual race cars in the game. Let's say we see the actual meat of the game now. As previously stated, there is no variation here. The practice race upgrade formula for the beginning championship, yeah, that's the entire game. There are no side modes, no car bowling, no one-make races, no time trials, no practice doesn't count, the timed reward is optional. It's just this 3-step formula. I genuinely don't know what else to say here other than this gets repetitive really fast. You know how games like Gran Turismo help spruce up the normal championship gameplay with prize cars to get excited over, coffee break challenges, license tests, or even moon racing if you're into that. The reason those features are there is because the developers knew that if their game was nothing but championships, the game would get stale fast. Hell, even previous Motorsport entries understood this with their gameplay variances. But the grand return half a decade later could not give any less of a shit about its player base and decided its core gameplay it's enough to satisfy without any alternations whatsoever. So that's it, right? This is the worst of Forza Motorsport's campaign, right? Yeah. I'm only halfway done talking about how awful this is. Next up on the chopping block concerning Forza Motorsport's campaign is speed, or should I say, the lack thereof. The highest car class you race in this game are low-end supercars and Corvette C8s. That's the fastest you can go in the base roster of Forza Motorsport's campaign. No hypercars, hell, no high-end supercars. The best you can do is however high you can go in S-Class Open. Otherwise, have fun rolling around in C or B or even E-Class races for 80% of most of your campaign runtime. Not helped by the fact that just about every race feels the need to be unnecessarily long. Not helped by Forza's still to this day jank AI system, which does not know how to race in packs, leaving a vast majority left behind in the first corner, with 1 or 2 stray cars which manage to escape rocketing miles ahead with no chance whatsoever of catching up, making all races putting you in this odd position ahead of the majority of the pack, but too far behind to see first and second, not making it a race at all. But more so, a leisurely cruise around Kailami for the 8th time. Now that we're on the subject of that, this game's laughably small track list does not do this campaign any favors, constantly popping up at tracks you were just at in the last championship, or at its worst, the same goddamn track in the same championship. In the JDM Legends Tour, you come to visit Hakone twice in this championship. That's how limiting the track choice is in this godforsaken game. In fact, let's have a little fun with math again. Since we know there's 20 tracks in this game, technically 19 since the crew is deathly afraid of Le Mans for some reason, this combined with the fact that the lowest number of possible races in a championship is 5, means that you can explore an entire quarter of the game's track list per championship. It would take a mere 4 championships to see all of the track variety that this game has to offer. Forza's incessant need to hold back tracks like Daytona, Nordschleife, Brands Hatch, Alps, Prague, Rio, and even Monza to save for their live service has only served to gut this career structure even further than it already has. A broken, monotonous mess that takes nearly 3 hours to complete a single championship due to how long the races are. The filler involving the practice laps and how slow they make the car classes you're forced to drive are, with very little variation because this track list is abysmal. All of this is more than awful enough. But earlier, I said this is one of the worst campaigns in video game history, and while yes, all of this is pretty atrocious, is it really enough to be the worst of the worst? The reason I make that claim is because despite everything, despite all of the monolithic oversights and general lack of care whatsoever for a single player experience, there is still one more thing I have yet to mention, one last cherry on top of this shit sundae, one last thing that adds an entire new layer to everything. If you've seen anything regarding this game whatsoever, you'll know it's not very well programmed. Up there with Cyberpunk's Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Security Breach, just to name a few. Games that while definitely buggy, I still enjoyed considerably, despite said glitches. So why bring it up in comparison to Forza Motorsport's campaign? Where's the correlation? Well, regarding these other games, the reason I'm able to forgive them is because they never once actively stole progress from me. The same cannot be said for Forza Motorsport. On top of everything else, the fact that the game can just randomly decide to glitch and reset a race, maybe 2 races, hell, maybe even your entire championship and into the previous championship, wasting actual hours due to zero fault of your own, simply because the developers decided we don't want to put save points in the game. I wish I could tell you this was a rare occurrence, but it isn't. This random bug is constant, happening almost in every single championship. And not just happening to me, but everyone I know who has made a valiant attempt at getting through this campaign has suffered the exact same thing. No one is safe from the game randomly deciding it no longer wants to function, crashing on you, and deciding the repercussions should be to reset anywhere from 1 to 5 races, forcing you to complete all of it all over again. It's a feeling I can't describe as anything other than complete dread and emptiness, continually forced to race the exact same events with no variation, no sense of action, no stakes, no nothing. It's just a complete waste. So with all of this in mind, why even bother? Why the hell would you even subject yourself to such torture? Well, if you want, let's say, a Lexus LFA, a 2017 Ford GT, or perhaps even the new Forza R8, you don't get a choice. You have to trudge through this garbage to obtain these cars, and you better do it fast, because guess what? That's right. Some of these are timed only. At the time of upload, this R8 won't even be available to obtain anymore after it's permanently shut down. And because the auction house is gone, you will never be able to get this car again. So yeah, if you have any specific cars that just so happen to be locked behind this god-awful excuse of a career, then you must keep up with the constant progress resets, just to have to keep up with the constant flow of FOMO that Forza seems to believe is absolutely necessary to run his business. Okay, editing and post. Just wanted to add that during the making of this script, there was recently a new update adding Yas Marina. In the patch notes for this update, state that the constant loss of progress in career mode was fixed. I tested this, and immediately found out that no, it's not fixed. I still lost my progress after just a few races. So yeah, looks like we're stuck with this forever. Okay, back to the rest of this segment. As previously stated, I hope this paints a clear picture as to why I believe this is one of the worst campaigns in video game history. There is not a single redeeming thing about this game's single player. The fact it released this way, in this state, is utterly laughable. How on earth this managed to get approved makes a complete mockery of motor racing as an art form, and a textbook example of what never to do when creating a single player for a racing game. But if you thought our tribulations end with a single player, you would be oh so wrong. On to you again, Quack.
Well, here we are again. Another video, another Forza game, another instance of me sneaking into the UltraViolet video to give my piece on the current state of things. And what a state indeed. For those of you who don't know me from the Forza Horizon 5 video, my gamertag is SWR Quackula. I've been a member of the Forza competitive community for over 3 years now, and I'm currently a member of staff at Horizon Racing Academy and Racing Haven, two of the largest competitive Discord servers currently in existence. This puts me in a good position to funnel the thoughts of die-hard competitive players to you, the viewer, and to give you a taste of how the launch period has been for us. Firstly, let's have a look at the things they've fixed. 1010 has at least rectified some of the problems we've had, but nowhere close to all of them. Most of the fixes were related to bugs in the livery editor, tuning menu and UI, to include stopping the AFK leveling exploit and removing the wheel speed XP glitch. The main thing affecting us as a community was the long-awaited sorting out of error wash. Error wash in real life is a phenomenon where when two or more cars are following each other very closely, a few meters at most from rear spoiler to front bumper, the airflow passing over the lead car is disrupted by the chase car. As a result, the lead car experiences turbulence over the rear aerodynamic surfaces, or more simply, a loss of rear downforce. However, in Forza Motorsport, following launch, this could be felt as soon as the chase car was within slipstream range for the lead car. This essentially meant that following an overtake, the lead car had to be significantly faster than the chase car to pull away, and would often make mistakes due to the sudden and drastic change in rear downforce. Fortunately, the number of complaints received about this mechanic resulted in a change in the most recent update at time of recording. While it isn't perfect, the effect is greatly reduced, and close racing without too much artificial interference is now possible again. Now we move on to the parts they haven't done anything about, and there are a lot. There is a current investigation going on into the seemingly random interaction between a car and the conditions of a race. Some drivers have experienced a noticeable change in the behaviour of the car, meaning a retune is required on a per-lobby basis. While this can possibly be some kind of placebo, the differences in lap times, which can be as much as a second between different free-play sessions with identical conditions, seem to speak otherwise. However, since there's no concrete evidence yet, we can't firmly point the finger at an error in the game. What we can address, however, is the discrepancy between Rivals, free play and online multiplayer. In Forza 7, pace was entirely dependent on the conditions of the race. However, things are a lot less simple in the new game. While the conditions do have an impact, the introduction of rubbering seems to have wreaked havoc with the pace differential between game modes. While it is a good mechanic in theory, allowing cars to increase in pace throughout the course of a race as they would in real life, the fact that rubbering goes far beyond the 100% you can set it to manually means race pace is untestable outside, well, a race. Rivals appears to have the default 50% rubber, but despite the fuel load being forced to 100%, it still appears to be faster than freeplay with dynamic rubber turned off. Overall, it is an inconsistent mess that makes it difficult for anyone to gauge their pace. Tyre wear is another integral part of a track racer, and with the new soft, medium, hard and wet tyre compounds, one would think it would play an even bigger part in the racing strategy in online lobbies, private multiplayer and career mode alike. However, it appears that our favourite racing game developers decided 'twas not to be. Instead of allowing us to choose how aggressive the tyre wear settings would be, whether it be online or in career mode, they decided that it would not be adjustable at all, in any environment. The result? Let's use information from the Racing Haven BMW M6 challenge as an example. A half-hour race can be completed with one pit stop on soft race tyres without ever losing a noticeable amount of grip, and the strategy can even be extended to the point of pitting at the start of the third lap and still making it to the end of the race on comfortable pace. This is the same in single player. However, in online lobbies the tyre wear is 6 times more potent. In touring cars, wet tyres will reach 95% wear in the space of 2 laps of Le Mans, and the GT cars will need either 2 sets of mediums or hards then softs to make the end of a race. Considering this is under 10 minutes, it's reasonable to think that this is Turn 10's attempt to force you into using their new tyre compounds, but it would be nice if we were allowed to do this on our own races instead. Naturally, in our own races we would quite like such a thing as a reliable start. In previous Forza games, the most common one has been everyone's favourite "You have been disconnected" screen. However, there's a new barrier to getting a race going: invisible cars. When starting an event, there is a chance that in the perspective of some people, other drivers will simply not appear on the track. Naturally, this makes it very difficult for said invisible car to pass, defend, or otherwise exist on the track near someone who can't see them. Worse still, it appears to be completely random, and to my knowledge there is never a circumstance where 2 cars can't see each other, so it's almost always a disadvantage to someone. When looking back at race perspectives for stewarding purposes, you simply can't do anything about it, because it's nobody but the game's fault. Even Rivals isn't free of issues in this game. However, instead of missing cars, this time it's duplicates. More than once it has been seen that 2 identical lap times set by the same driver can appear separately on the same leaderboard. While this isn't theoretically a major problem, the fact that a $100,000 prize pool qualifier rests on the functionality of the Rivals board, and a duplicate time has been seen in the top 25 of this event, it's a little worrying. One of the most popular complaints against the updated features of the game is the new mechanic which forces drivers to shift differently by, and I quote, removing the power shifting exploit. End quote. So first of all, power shifting is still a thing. What Turn 10 did manage to do is make manual with clutch one of the most awkward things to use in the game, so despite it being faster in every environment, a lot of people choose not to use it for convenience. I'm not going to go into how it's done here because it would be too difficult to explain and take forever, but I can confirm that the clutch is not needed to shift in race cars with sequential gearboxes. In fact, it's still faster to use manual with clutch without using the clutch in such cars because Turn 10 makes a lot of sense. People who play online have still more to deal with. The skill-based matchmaking system is functional, barely, and has a habit of putting people at indecently high ratings with very little merit. To be fair, it is possible to reach 5,000 elo, but it requires repeated victories over other players with 4,999 elo. Outside this extremely difficult achievement, which as far as I know has only been done by Greeted Dust 8, the system makes it alarmingly easy to reach high ratings without ever matching people with appropriately skilled drivers. Instead of putting people together with drivers that even in the same ballpark, the game prioritizes filling lobbies, but this comes with the sacrifice of top drivers having very little competition. When you're finally online having a decent race, heaven forbid you go half a millimetre outside the track limits, or are on the receiving end of a ramp. While sometimes the penalties are justified, it seems that more often than not, tracks like Spa have a vengeful streak against anyone who makes the slightest mistake. Outlandishly overstated penalties for track limit infringements, and yet not a whisper of responsibility for those who choose the path of violence. I know I don't hold out much hope for this being fixed, and the race control in races I have partaken in seems to be mostly the retraction of penalties rather than the issuing of them. Something you won't get penalised for as yet unknown purposes, is crossing the track limits where the pit lane is. On tracks such as Mid-Ohio, the first turn could be completely cut without not only a penalty, but without dirtying the lap, and since replays aren't working at the moment, it's not really something we can police in racing leagues. Such fun. Of course, just driving is not going to be so bad, right? Well, if you have a racing wheel, think again. At least on the default game settings, players I've spoken to mention that there is a distinct lack of feel in the wheel, which makes it difficult to use, and the most grip is found beyond the point where force feedback stops, where usually understeer would come into play. While in-game settings can be adjusted to help the feel, these same settings also affect the pace of the control method. The fastest settings unfortunately mean that the wheel will feel worse, meaning that as a competitive input device it really isn't for everyone. Forza as a franchise has been often known as one that does not know how to host a competitive game. Exploits, unmatchable metas, an endless list of bugs, hopelessly limited support for community events which encourage competition, and more. However, while Turn 10 seems to have finally taken into account the community requests to implement some kind of balance of performance, or BOP, they're doing a poor job of it at best. We hope that since the PI was different for every car in classes such as touring cars and GT, they would be balanced in the future to at some point make a balanced array of cars in each class. After launch, the disgustingly overpowered Golf TCR was the prime poster child for an upcoming nerf. However, Turn 10, being Turn 10, did not nerf the upgrades. Instead, they implemented a drastic 10% power and 2.5% grip handicap, which was only applicable online. Instantly demoted the Golf from the best overall car to the worst in every way by a landslide. The next update brought doom for the less overpowered R8 GT3, where it suffered a rear grip handicap which instantly ruined all tunes made for the car in the past months. While this was a more appropriate pace nerf, it would still have been better for Turn 10 to make use of their ballast implementation that they said so much about. The last negative I'm going to cover is one of the most controversial changes in the game, the upgrade system. I'm sure Moses has done a much better job than I at covering the intricacies, so I'll keep this short and related to competition. Leagues such as the Online Racing Association, Racing Haven, Forza Team Wars, Delta Online Racing and more all hosted races with multiple different balanced, custom upgraded cars in Forza 7. We took it for granted that we could upgrade cars quickly, test them, change the configurations, test again, and continue doing that until the cars were balanced. The testing would take time, we knew that, but now? It takes a number of hours in the double digits just to unlock the upgrades. Each driver has to grind out hundreds of laps before testing can even start, and I speak for the majority of the competitive community when I say that this upgrade system has no place governing every event that can ever be hosted. For career mode, sure, it implements progress, and makes completing the career feel like an achievement. But this game isn't a job. Those of us who have grown up with this franchise already have full-time jobs, responsibilities and other things to take care of. It's not good enough. I was going to try and end on a positive note by complimenting the game's physics, which I do genuinely like. The improvement in simulation steering and its twitchy nature, allowing for more consistent driving, as well as the new tyre model. It worked well. However, the implementation of Yas Marina's ice curbs, the squares at Silverstone that try and take the underside of your car off, the curbs that try and automatically spin you every time you touch them, I simply can't take it as an overall good thing. I've played every Forza game since Motorsport 3 and have never been so disappointed. It is destroying competition and eroding the communities a few hardworking individuals have slaved away for years to build. So with that, I would like to thank VNX Alban for helping me with the information and opinions, as well as Moses for including me in his video again. But I can't end this on a high. Sorry about that.
After all of this, there's one main question that Forza Motorsport leaves me with, and that's why? Why release this product in this state? Why release it now? Why purposefully cut out what your fanbase grew to love? And the worst part is, there's no answer, as the end result is nonsensical. As for release timing, we know that Microsoft leaked the refreshed Xbox Series X for some time in 2024, and this would be a fantastic first-party title to really push sales for the new console. It would give this game more time in the oven, let them clean up the missteps, and hey, maybe even have a functioning product. But even then I fear this game is too far gone. Instead, it was shoehorned into the busy and chaotic Broketober, where sales were guaranteed to be low, especially with so many racing competitors releasing in that short time frame. So this doesn't even make sense business-wise. I would say that this destroyed Turn 10's reputation, as a product this shameful really should do. But as a friend of mine discovered recently, Microsoft may be trying their hardest to cover up this mess with artificial intelligence. If you look at Metacritic, you will see plenty of reviews which follow a very strict pattern. A username with two words in combination, the first and second being capitalized, an initial stanza about the game's interface and UI, followed by a few sentences about wonder or unique identity, thanking the production team, and finally, stating that this is a valuable game worthy of the highest grades. We'll leave a list of these down below in the description, where you can find all of these reviewers have only one review. and that is Forza Motorsport. This is really the level that Forza Motorsport has come to, is it? What was once debatably the greatest track racing game of all time has fallen to a level where its publisher has to cover up outcry from the fans who built its legacy with AI-generated reviews. It's not only pathetic, it is genuinely depressing. If there was one thing I ask of Turn 10, do not try and salvage this game. Just don't bother. This is too far gone to save. Forza has been stuck in a pattern for what seems like eons now, releasing an unfinished product at launch, have the development team spend years building it up to what it should have been at launch, costing precious development time for the next game in the series, which ends up unfinished thanks to all of the time spent fixing the last, and this cycle continues forever. Where do you even go now, Turn 10? Your reboot of an already flailing series has flopped, so what do you do? Well, I'll tell you what has to happen. Whatever they do next has to be an absolute knockout success. But if this is the best this studio can do, I don't think that any form of success is possible. We, as your ever-present fan base, make videos like this not to shame you, not to demean you, but because we have an emotional connection to this series and want to see you do better. This video is not out of hate, but tough love. Our only hope is you can finally see everything wrong with modern Forza and drag this franchise out of the depths of apathy where it's sure to live forever unless Turn 10 finally steps up to the plate and remembers who they can be.